Welcome back to Midnight Affair Tales. Thank you for joining us. The rain hit the black umbrellas like bullets. It was a quiet funeral, too quiet for a man who had spent his life chasing criminals and putting them behind bars. Grayson Calloway was dead. That's what everyone thought. Ronan Calloway stood in the crowd, unseen, blending with the sea of mourners dressed in black. His head was lowered, a dark hat covering most of his face. He watched as his brother's casket was lowered into the ground, the dull thud of wet dirt hitting the wooden box echoing through the graveyard. His hands curled into fists. He wasn't supposed to be here. As a Navy SEAL, he had spent years on secret missions, learning how to vanish without a trace. But this wasn't war, this was home. And now his twin brother, an FBI agent with a sharp mind and a relentless pursuit of justice, was lying 6 feet under. Except, Ronan wasn't sure Grayson's death was an accident. Vivian Calloway, his brother's wife, stood near the grave, dabbing at her dry eyes with a silk handkerchief. She was wearing black, but grief didn't sit right on her. It clung to her like a costume, something she had thrown on to play a part. Beside her, Caleb Monroe, a powerful real estate tycoon with ties to men Ronan had spent years fighting overseas, placed a hand on Vivian's back. A gesture of comfort. A touch that lingered just a little too long. Ronan's gut twisted. Something was off. His brother had been healthy, strong, careful. There had been no signs, no warnings, just a sudden, tragic accident that didn't add up. He shouldn't be here. But he had to be. Because if Grayson's death wasn't an accident, who was next? Ronan didn't go straight to the house. He waited. He watched. Vivian's mansion, the one she had shared with Grayson, was a fortress of steel and glass. Lights were on in the upstairs bedroom. Caleb Monroe's sleek black car was parked in the driveway. She hadn't even waited for the funeral to end before inviting another man into her home. Ronan clenched his jaw. From his vantage point across the street, he could see shadows moving behind the curtains. He wasn't sure which made his stomach turn more, the idea of Vivian already moving on or the fact that it was Caleb she was moving on with. He forced himself to stay calm. Storming in would accomplish nothing. He had to be smart, patient. He had done this before, slipped into places he didn't belong, became someone else to get the job done. This time the disguise was simple. He wasn't Ronan Calloway anymore. He was Grayson. The real challenge wasn't getting inside. It was becoming his brother. Every detail had to be perfect. The way he walked, the way he spoke, the way he reacted to Vivian's touch. Grayson had been an investigator, a man of logic. Ronan was different. Sharp, dangerous, unpredictable. He had to bury that side of himself. And so, hours later, when he finally stepped through the front door with a key he had stolen from Grayson's old office, he was ready to play the part. The house smelled the same, like expensive leather, oak wood, and the faintest trace of Vivian's perfume. A framed photo sat on the hallway table. Grayson and Vivian, smiling. A perfect lie. Ronan turned it face down. He made his way upstairs, his boots silent against the marble. The door to the master bedroom was slightly ajar. Voices murmured inside. He pushed the door open just a fraction more. Caleb Monroe sat on the edge of the bed, his shirt half unbuttoned. Vivian was next to him, holding a glass of wine, laughing softly. She wasn't mourning. Ronan's blood boiled, but he didn't move. Not yet. The game had just begun. The next morning Ronan made his move. He had spent the night learning Grayson's world, going through his files, his emails, his case notes. The more he read, the clearer the picture became. Grayson had been investigating something big. Something that involved Caleb Monroe. The official report had said heart failure, but Grayson had no medical history of heart problems. That wasn't just strange. That was a cover-up. And Ronan was going to find out why. The first step was facing Vivian. When she came down the grand staircase that morning, she froze. Ronan stood in the center of the living room, casually sipping coffee from one of Grayson's mugs. She gasped, dropping her phone onto the floor. "What the?" she stammered, eyes wide, face going pale. Ronan smirked. Perfect reaction. "Morning, babe," he said smoothly, lowering the mug. Just like Grayson would have. Vivian's lips parted, eyes darting over him like she was seeing a ghost. You're supposed to be dead?" Ronan set the mug down, taking a slow step toward her. "Yeah, I heard that rumor. Kind of dramatic, don't you think?" Vivian backed up, her hands shaking. She looked absolutely terrified. "Good." Ronan tilted his head, watching her closely. Grayson had been a good man, but Ronan wasn't. And for the first time since this all started, Vivian was about to learn the difference. The moment Vivian saw him standing there, the blood drained from her face. Her lips parted, but no words came out. It was the reaction Ronan had expected, as if she had just seen a ghost. "Say something, babe," he said, tilting his head. "You look like you've seen the devil." Vivian stumbled back, gripping the edge of the staircase railing. Her fingers trembled against the polished wood. This isn't possible," she whispered, voice barely above a breath. Ronan took a slow, deliberate step toward her. Grayson would have reassured her. Told her she was just seeing things, that she needed to sit down, that maybe she was still overwhelmed by grief. But Ronan wasn't Grayson. "I don't know, Viv," he murmured, letting just enough edge slip into his voice. "Looks pretty possible to me." Her chest rose and fell in rapid breaths. Her eyes flicked to his face, then lower, searching for something. Maybe a scar that wasn't there. Maybe a difference she could latch onto. She wouldn't find one. He had become Grayson. He had studied his twin's voice, his expressions, the way he carried himself. And now, as he stood in his brother's house, drinking coffee from his brother's cup, he let her own guilt do the rest of the work. Vivian swallowed hard. You weren't dead?" Ronan finished for her, his smirk widening just a little. "Yeah, I heard that rumor too." Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Then, from the hallway behind her, the sound of a door clicking open. Ronan didn't turn his head. He didn't need to. He already knew. Caleb Monroe was here. Ronan didn't react right away. He kept his posture relaxed, letting Vivian's panic unravel her from the inside. She turned just as Caleb stepped into the room, still adjusting the cuff of his shirt. When he looked up and saw Ronan standing there, the color drained from his face too. Ronan almost smiled. If nothing else, at least these two deserved each other. "What the hell?" Caleb's voice was sharp, but there was something underneath it, something cracking. Vivian turned back to Ronan, eyes wild. "This isn't happening," she whispered. Ronan finally sighed. "You keep saying that, Viv. But here I am." Caleb moved fast. Too fast. He reached for something under his blazer. A weapon? The phone? It didn't matter. Ronan had already closed the distance between them. With one quick, calculated move, he grabbed Caleb by the wrist and twisted it behind his back, slamming him against the wall. Caleb grunted in pain. "Son of a..." "Don't struggle," Ronan murmured. "I'd hate to have to break something." Vivian let out a small gasp, stepping back. "Grayson, please?" The name almost made him pause. But he didn't. Instead, he leaned closer to Caleb's ear. His voice dropped into a whisper. "How long?" he asked. Caleb struggled against his grip. "What the hell are you talking about?" "How long?" Ronan repeated, pressing just a little harder. "Have you been screwing my wife?" Silence. Then, a single bitter laugh. Caleb lifted his chin. Even now, even when his arm was twisted behind his back, even when his worst nightmare had just walked back into his house, he still had the audacity to smirk. "You have no idea," Caleb muttered. Ronan's stomach coiled. He shoved Caleb harder against the wall before releasing him. The man stumbled forward, cursing. Vivian flinched. Ronan turned to her next. "You gonna answer?" She just stood there. Frozen. "Nothing," he murmured. "No excuse? No fake tears?" Vivian shook her head. "I..." And then Caleb laughed again. This time it was sharper. Meaner. "I gotta say," Caleb exhaled, rubbing his wrist, "this is actually funny." Ronan tilted his head, voice low. "Enlighten me." Caleb looked up at him. His grin widened. "You weren't supposed to be here," he said. "You were next." Ronan didn't move. He barely even breathed. Caleb took a slow step forward, stretching his arms. "Grayson was first, but we both knew that. He was getting too close. Asking too many questions. But you?" He chuckled. "Man, I wasn't expecting you back so soon. You just made our job easier." Vivian's head snapped toward him. "Caleb." "Oh, don't act shocked, babe," Caleb drawled. "You knew what we had to do. The only way to move forward was to get rid of the past." Ronan stared at him. And for the first time since stepping back into this house, something inside him burned. They had planned to kill him. Not just Grayson. Him. The only reason he was still standing here, breathing, was because they thought he was already dead. He smiled. A slow, dangerous smile. Well, Ronan said, I hate to disappoint. And then he moved. Special message. To everyone watching this, thank you. We've officially hit 1,000 subscribers, and it's because of your love and support. This is only the beginning. I'm bringing you bigger, bolder, and even more gripping stories, so if you're loving this, let's hit 2,000 next. And before we continue, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. Because trust me, this story? It's only getting started. Ronan stood in the dimly lit room, the tension thick enough to choke on. The revelation still burned in his veins. They had planned his death too. Caleb Monroe smirked, rolling his wrist where Ronan had twisted it just moments ago. He was too arrogant, too sure of himself. He didn't realize the danger he was in. Not yet. Vivian stood frozen, her face pale. The betrayal on her lips was still fresh, but Ronan wasn't interested in her excuses. Not now. Not ever. He took a slow step forward, his voice even. You really thought you'd get away with it? Caleb's smirk didn't waver. We already did. Vivian sucked in a breath, turning sharply toward him. Caleb, shut up. But Caleb wasn't done. He liked the power. The control. He thought he was still winning. Grayson wasn't the first problem I've handled, Calloway, Caleb said, straightening his shirt. He was just the most difficult. Always looking too close. Always digging where he didn't belong. You know what happens to people like that? He tilted his head. They disappear. A muscle in Ronan's jaw ticked. He wanted to kill him right there. To wrap his hands around his throat and watch the life drain from his eyes. But that would be too easy. Too quick. Caleb didn't deserve quick. He forced himself to relax, to slip into Grayson's skin once more. Ronan let out a low chuckle. You think you're untouchable? Caleb's grin stretched wider. I don't think, Calloway. I know. Vivian exhaled sharply. Caleb stopped talking. But Ronan had heard enough. He had all the confirmation he needed. Caleb had killed Grayson. And Vivian had known about it. They had planned his death next. And now, they thought they were safe. He smiled again, but this time it wasn't friendly. It wasn't calm. It was a promise. A promise of revenge. The moment Ronan left the house, he felt the rage settle into something colder. Something sharper. He didn't just want revenge. He wanted to destroy them. But to do that, he needed help. That's where Detective Noah Briggs came in. Noah had been Grayson's closest friend on the force. If there was one person who would still be digging into his death, it was him. Ronan pulled out his burner phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. It rang once. Twice. Then, who the hell is this? Ronan smirked. Same old Noah. It's Grayson. Silence. Then, the sound of something clattering to the ground. What the? Noah's voice was sharp. That's not funny. Who is this? Ronan leaned back against his car. Meet me at the docks in an hour. I'll explain everything. The line went dead. Noah would come. He had to. Ronan knew the truth about Caleb and Vivian's betrayal, but he needed evidence. He needed to make it public. And Noah? Noah would help him burn it all down. The docks were nearly empty when Ronan arrived. The cold wind bit at his skin, but he barely felt it. Noah Briggs was already there, leaning against his black SUV, arms crossed. His gun was holstered at his side, but Ronan knew better than to think Noah wasn't ready to use it. The detective's expression was unreadable, but his eyes, sharp, suspicious and furious, never left Ronan's face. When Ronan stepped into the light, Noah's breath hitched. Jesus Christ, Noah whispered. You're alive? Ronan finished for him. Noah swallowed. This isn't possible. Grayson. Grayson's dead, Ronan said, voice flat. And I'm going to make sure the people responsible pay. Noah's jaw clenched. He took a slow step forward, studying him closer. How the hell did you survive? Ronan exhaled. I didn't. Noah's brows furrowed. I don't understand. You don't need to, Ronan said. Not yet. What you do need to know is that Grayson was onto something before he died. Something big. Noah's fists clenched. Yeah, I know. He was investigating Caleb Monroe. Ronan stilled. He told you? Noah let out a bitter laugh. He didn't need to. I saw it in his eyes. The last time I spoke to him, he told me he had a lead, said it would change everything. Ronan felt his stomach tighten. Grayson had been so damn close. Noah's expression darkened. Next thing I knew, he was dead. Ronan met his eyes. It wasn't an accident. Noah swallowed hard. Tell me everything. So Ronan did. By the time he finished, Noah looked ready to kill. They plan to take you out too? Noah asked, voice tight. Ronan nodded. But they don't know I know. Noah exhaled sharply. He paced for a few seconds, running a hand down his face. All right, Noah muttered. All right. Let's bring them down. Ronan nodded once. It was time. Caleb and Vivian had spent so much time playing their little game. They had no idea who they were up against. Ronan sat across from Noah in the dimly lit bar just outside the docks, a place where men whispered secrets over cheap whiskey and the world outside didn't matter. Noah hadn't touched his drink. His fingers drummed against the table, his expression locked in something between disbelief and fury. You're telling me, Noah said finally, his voice low, controlled, dangerous, that Vivian and Caleb planned your murder too? Ronan exhaled slowly, rolling the glass between his palms. Yeah. Noah's jaw clenched. And you're just walking around their house? Playing pretend? You could have put a bullet in both of them. I could have. Ronan met his eyes. But I don't want them dead. Not yet. Noah stared at him. You're a bigger bastard than I thought. Ronan smirked, but there was no humor in it. I need evidence, Noah. The kind that destroys them. I don't want them to just die. I want them to burn. Noah leaned back, exhaling sharply. All right. I'll bite. What's the plan? Ronan pulled a USB drive from his pocket and slid it across the table. Noah arched a brow. What's this? Grayson's files, Ronan said. The ones they didn't erase. Noah's expression darkened as he picked it up. You think this is enough to prove Caleb had him killed? No, Ronan said. But it's a start. Noah studied him for a long moment. Then he pocketed the drive and stood. I'll dig into this, he said. In the meantime, try not to get yourself killed. Ronan smirked. No promises. By the time Ronan returned to the Calloway estate, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Vivian's car was still in the driveway, but Caleb's was gone. Ronan let himself in, his movements fluid, natural. He was Grayson now. He found Vivian in the kitchen, a glass of red wine in her hand. She turned when she heard him, and for a moment, her mask slipped. She looked afraid. Good. Ronan leaned against the counter, tilting his head. Something wrong, Viv? She hesitated, gripping the stem of her wine glass a little too tightly. I thought I heard something outside earlier. Yeah. She nodded slowly. It sounded like someone was watching the house. Ronan let a slow smile curl on his lips. Perfect. The first part of his plan was already working. He had left subtle clues, a chair slightly moved, a car parked down the street for too long, a shadow crossing their bedroom window just before dawn. Just enough to make them paranoid. Vivian took a slow sip of her wine, her gaze darting to him. I think Caleb's worried. He left earlier. Said he needed to take care of something. Ronan hummed, keeping his face neutral. Caleb wasn't a man who ran from shadows. He fought when he felt cornered. And that meant one thing. He was already trying to cover his tracks. Good. Let him try. He wouldn't see the next hit coming. Ronan was halfway up the stairs when he heard it, the unmistakable sound of a gun being cocked. He barely had time to react before a shadow moved in the hallway, and the first bullet tore through the air. He dove forward, rolling into the nearest room just as the second shot splintered the doorframe behind him. Son of a... The shooter wasn't Caleb. Caleb was too arrogant to handle things himself. Which meant he'd hired someone. Ronan pressed his back against the wall, heart steady, mind sharp. This wasn't war, but the rules were the same. Stay calm. Find the weakness. Strike first. Footsteps moved toward him, slow, calculated. The shooter was checking the rooms. Ronan waited. Timed it. And the moment the door creaked open, he moved. A sharp twist. A kick to the knee. A gun ripped from unsteady fingers. The shooter, a man dressed in black, a professional, let out a choked gasp as Ronan turned the gun on him. Bad luck, Ronan muttered. The man barely had time to blink before Ronan slammed the butt of the gun against his skull. The body hit the floor. Ronan exhaled. So it begins. Caleb had made his move. Now it was his turn. Ronan didn't waste time. The moment the hired gun hit the floor, he bent down and checked the man's pockets. A burner phone. Ronan yanked it out, scrolling through recent calls. One number stood out. No name, just a single outgoing call made minutes before the attack. Kill. He smirked. Gotcha. The bastard had moved faster than he expected. Hiring a professional meant Caleb was feeling cornered. That was good. That meant he was making mistakes. Ronan tucked the phone into his pocket and glanced toward the hallway. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Vivian hadn't come running. Interesting. Either she was too scared to move or she already knew. His stomach coiled at the thought. How deep did her betrayal really go? Ronan took the gun from the assassin's limp hand, checked the magazine, then stepped over the body. Time to see how much she really knew. He found Vivian exactly where he left her, in the kitchen, still holding that damn glass of wine. She turned when he walked in. Her face was pale, her lips slightly parted. He let the silence stretch between them, let her feel the weight of his stare. The weight of everything she had done. Finally she spoke. What was that? Her voice was barely a whisper. Ronan tilted his head. She was fishing. She knew something happened, but not what. He stepped forward, placing the gun on the counter between them. The soft clink of metal against granite made her flinch. A question for you, Ronan said smoothly. What happens when a hitman fails? Vivian stiffened. Her knuckles went white around the stem of the glass. She knew. Ronan smirked, but there was nothing friendly about it. You tell Caleb, he continued, voice calm, that next time he should send someone who knows how to shoot. Vivian sucked in a sharp breath. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Ronan turned away, but not before sliding his phone onto the counter. Screen up, recording everything. Vivian swallowed hard. Grayson. He turned back, leaning in close. Too close. You're scared, Viv. Her breath hitched. Good. Why? He murmured. Why do you look like you've seen a ghost? Her throat bobbed. Because I have. Ronan let out a low chuckle. No, sweetheart. You've seen karma. And just like that, her mask shattered. Ronan let her sit with the fear. Let her feel it deep in her bones. She had spent weeks pretending to be the grieving widow. Now she was the mouse in a lion's den. Vivian's gaze flicked to the gun still sitting between them. What are you going to do? He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. What do you think I should do? She hesitated. A flicker of something crossed her face. Regret? Guilt? Or just fear? She started, then stopped. I never wanted this. Ronan laughed. Cool. Sure. Bullshit. Vivian flinched. You knew exactly what Caleb was planning, Ronan continued. And you did nothing. I was scared, she whispered. He scoffed. So was Grayson when you let him die. Tears welled in her eyes, but Ronan felt nothing. He picked up his phone, ending the recording. Vivian's eyes flicked toward it. She opened her mouth, to plead, to lie, he wasn't sure, but before she could, his burner phone vibrated. A known number. Ronan sighed. Speak of the devil. He answered. Yeah. Caleb's voice was low, controlled. But Ronan could hear it, the edge of panic. You're a hard man to kill, Calloway? Ronan smirked. I try. Silence. Then, we need to talk. Ronan glanced at Vivian. She was holding her breath. He made a show of thinking, then shrugged. Sure, he said. Let's talk. The meeting was set for midnight. A private location. No security. Just Caleb and him. A trap. Ronan knew it. Caleb wasn't desperate enough to call a meeting unless he had a backup plan. Fine. Let him think he was in control. Ronan had played these games before, except this time the stakes were personal. He turned back to Vivian. She hadn't moved. You're coming with me, he said. Her eyes widened. What? No. Don't argue, Viv. He grabbed his coat. We're past that. She was shaking her head. Caleb will kill me. Ronan paused. Then he smiled. Sure. Cool. Yeah, he said. That's the point. Vivian froze. Ronan stepped closer, voice softer now. Do you think he's going to let you walk away from this, Viv? She swallowed. You're a liability, he continued. He knows it. I know it. And now. So do you. Vivian had nowhere to go. No one to turn to. So she did the only thing she could. She nodded. Ronan smiled again. Good girl. He grabbed his keys, the phone, the gun. Time to end this. Time to break Caleb Monroe. Ronan didn't believe in luck. He believed in strategy, control, and the power of forcing an enemy to destroy themselves. Caleb Monroe thought he was running this game. He wasn't. Ronan walked into the upscale restaurant like he owned the place, his movements smooth, confident. He had spent years learning how to blend in, how to be invisible, how to be someone else when the mission required it. Tonight, the mission required him to be Grayson Calloway. Vivian trailed behind him, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She wasn't speaking, not yet, but her body language screamed unease. She knew Caleb was dangerous. But she didn't realize Ronan was worse. Caleb was already waiting in a private booth near the back, swirling a glass of bourbon in one hand. He glanced up as they approached, and for a split second Ronan saw something behind the smirk: surprise, uncertainty, fear. Good. Ronan slid into the seat across from him, nodding at Vivian to sit beside him. She hesitated, then obeyed. Caleb tilted his head, studying them. Nice of you to bring a date. Ronan smiled. Sure. Cool. Figured it was time for a family reunion. Caleb chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You're ballsy for a dead man. Ronan leaned forward. And you're stupid for a man who planned my murder. Silence. Vivian sucked in a breath. Caleb's smirk twitched. But Ronan wasn't done. He pulled out his phone, the one with the recording of Vivian and Caleb's conversation, and set it on the table. One tap. And their own words filled the space between them. Grayson was first, but we both knew that. He was getting too close. The only way to move forward was to get rid of the past. Caleb went still. Vivian trembled beside Ronan. He picked up his drink, taking a slow sip. Then he smiled. Drink up, Caleb, he murmured. This is your last meal as a free man. Vivian was unraveling. Ronan could see it in the way her fingers twisted the napkin in her lap, in the way her breaths came just a little too fast. And Caleb? Caleb was doing the math. The power had shifted. He wasn't holding the gun anymore. Ronan was. Caleb exhaled sharply, dropping his fake smile. What do you want? Ronan leaned back, stretching his arms across the back of the booth. Relaxed. In control. I want justice. Caleb scoffed. You want revenge. Same thing. Caleb's jaw ticked. The recording won't hold up in court. Ronan smirked. Who said anything about court? Silence. Vivian's breathing turned shallow. She realized it now. This wasn't about legal battles or trials. This was about blood. Caleb's shoulders squared. He lifted his glass, took a slow sip. Calculating. If you were going to kill me, you would have done it already. Ronan chuckled. That's the problem with men like you. You think death is the worst thing that can happen. Caleb's grip on the glass tightened. And then Ronan dropped the final bomb. I sent copies of this recording to 3 people, he said casually. If anything happens to me, they go straight to the FBI. Your company gets shut down. Your dirty deals get exposed. And you? You spend the rest of your life in a 6x8 cell. Caleb stiffened. Vivian turned wide, tear-filled eyes toward Ronan. You wouldn't. Ronan smiled. I already did. Caleb shoved his chair back, standing abruptly. This conversation is over. No, it's not. Caleb turned back, fury flickering across his face. What the hell else do you want? Ronan leaned forward. His next words would be the beginning of the end. You. Caleb narrowed his eyes. What? I don't want your money. I don't want your business. Ronan tilted his head. I want you to destroy yourself. Caleb stared at him. Confused. Furious. Then the realization hit. And for the first time in his life, Caleb Monroe looked truly afraid. Caleb walked out of the restaurant like a man who had just realized he was already in the coffin. Ronan watched him go, then turned to Vivian. She was shaking. Silent. Broken. Good. Time to go, Ronan said. She swallowed, nodding weakly. They left the restaurant and slid into his car. The city lights blurred past them in streaks of gold and red as he drove, but Vivian wasn't looking at the road. She was looking at him. Finally she spoke. What do you want from me? Ronan didn't answer right away. He let the silence stretch, let her feel the weight of everything collapsing around her. Then he said, I want you to watch. Vivian's lips parted. Watch what? Ronan pulled onto a side street and parked. Then he turned to her, his expression unreadable. Caleb is going to destroy himself, he said softly. And when he does, I want you to see what happens to people who betray me. Her breath caught. Ronan leaned closer. I want you to remember. Vivian stared at him, eyes wide, lips trembling. Because for the first time she understood. She wasn't just watching Caleb's downfall. She was watching her own. And there was nothing she could do to stop it. Caleb Monroe was a man who thrived on control. He manipulated, he deceived, and he eliminated threats before they could become problems. But for the first time in his life he wasn't in control. And it was driving him insane. Ronan watched from the shadows as Caleb stormed into his office, slamming the door behind him. His assistant flinched but said nothing. Everyone in the building knew something was wrong. Caleb's empire was crumbling. And he knew it. Ronan had made sure of that. He had leaked just enough information to the media. Whispers of fraud, stolen money, political bribes. Not enough to get Caleb arrested. Not yet. But enough to make his investors panic. Enough to make his business partners pull out. Enough to make him desperate. Caleb dropped into his leather chair, gripping the edge of his desk. His hands shook. He was losing everything. And he didn't even know who was pulling the strings. Ronan smirked from his vantage point, hidden behind the tinted glass of the building across the street. Caleb thought the world was collapsing around him by accident. He had no idea it was Ronan standing behind the curtain, ripping it all apart. This was the best part. Watching him fall. Watching him realize too late that the ground was gone. And the best part? The real fall hadn't even started yet. Vivian had spent her life lying. She had lied to Grayson. She had lied to herself. And when Caleb came along, promising wealth, power, excitement, she had lied to him too. She had thought she could escape this. Thought she could play innocent, survive the fallout. But as she sat across from Ronan in his car, her hands trembling in her lap, she knew the truth. There was no escape. Ronan had her cornered. And if she wanted to survive, she had only one option. She had to betray Caleb. She licked her lips, her voice barely above a whisper. I'll tell you everything. Ronan turned his head slightly, studying her. Everything? She swallowed hard. Every deal, every bribe, every crime Caleb committed. Even the ones Grayson didn't know about. Ronan leaned back in his seat, silent. She wasn't doing this because she regretted anything. She was doing this because she was terrified. Ronan let her stew in that fear for a moment, then nodded. Start talking. Vivian exhaled shakily, pressing her palms against her thighs. And then she confessed. She told him about the hit Caleb ordered on Grayson. She told him about the hidden accounts, the offshore money, the secret meetings with men who made people disappear. She told him about who Caleb really was, a man with powerful allies, men in politics, men in law enforcement. A man who would do anything to keep his empire. And most importantly, she told him where the bodies were buried. Ronan let her spill it all, his mind working faster than ever. She thought this would save her. She was wrong. Because now Ronan didn't just have leverage. He had everything he needed to destroy Caleb completely. The stage was set. Vivian had given up Caleb. Caleb was spiraling into paranoia. And Ronan? Ronan was about to drop the final match onto the gasoline-soaked wreckage. He walked into Caleb's penthouse without knocking. The security guards didn't stop him. They were already on his payroll. Caleb was waiting in his office, a glass of whiskey clutched in his hand, dark circles under his eyes. Ronan took his time, pouring himself a drink, letting the silence stretch. Finally he spoke. I just had a very interesting conversation with Vivian. Caleb's jaw tightened. Ronan swirled the whiskey in his glass. You know what she told me? Caleb's fingers twitched against the glass. She's a liar. Ronan chuckled. Yes, she is. But you know what's funny? He leaned forward, voice dropping. She told the truth this time. Caleb's entire body went still. And Ronan knew he had him. He leaned back, smiling. Tell me, Caleb, he murmured. How does it feel to be betrayed? The veins in Caleb's neck bulged. Where is she? Ronan tilted his head. Now, why would I tell you that? Caleb slammed his glass down. I swear to God, Calloway. What? Ronan asked, voice light. You'll kill me? Like you did Grayson? Caleb's nostrils flared. His hands shook. Ronan smirked. He was breaking. Tick-tock, Caleb, he murmured. It's only a matter of time before the feds come knocking. I wonder who they'll believe, me or the guy who's lost all his allies. Caleb's breathing was ragged. His empire was collapsing. His wife had betrayed him. His enemies were closing in. And the best part? Ronan wasn't even finished yet. He stood, adjusting his jacket. "You should probably check on Vivian," he said. "I hear she's been very talkative." And then he walked out. Behind him, Caleb roared in fury. Let them turn on each other. Let them destroy themselves. This was just the beginning. Special message. To everyone watching this, thank you. We've officially hit 1,400 subscribers, and it's because of your love and support. This is only the beginning. I'm bringing you bigger, bolder, and even more gripping stories, so if you're loving this, let's hit 2,000 next. And before we continue, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. Because trust me, this story, it's about to explode. Vivian Calloway had spent years living in luxury. She had draped herself in designer clothes, worn diamonds on her wrists, and sipped champagne in rooms filled with the city's most powerful men. And now she was sitting on a cold metal bench inside a holding cell. Her nails, always perfectly manicured, dug into her palms as she stared at the peeling gray walls. The sharp scent of bleach burned her nose. The distant sound of a cell door slamming made her flinch. This wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't supposed to be her life. She looked up as the metal bars screeched open. A guard stepped aside and a man in a suit walked in. Her lawyer. Vivian sprang to her feet. "Tell me you got me out." The lawyer adjusted his tie. "Bail has been denied." Her stomach plummeted. "What?" The lawyer sighed. "The prosecution has evidence of your involvement with Caleb Monroe's criminal activities. Conspiracy, fraud, accessory to murder." Vivian felt the room spin. This wasn't real. This was a nightmare. "But," she shook her head. "Caleb set me up." The lawyer's expression didn't change. "That may be true, but the feds don't care. Someone has to take the fall for this." Vivian staggered back, gripping the bench. No. The lawyer hesitated. Then he delivered the final blow. "They're making a deal with Caleb." Vivian's breath stopped. "He's flipping," the lawyer said. "He's turning over everything to save himself." She felt the world collapse around her. Caleb was betraying her. Just like she betrayed Grayson. And just like that, Vivian realized what true karma felt like. Ronan watched from across the street, parked in an unmarked black SUV. He had been in enough war zones to recognize when someone had been defeated. And Vivian Calloway? She had lost. Her hair was messy, her makeup smudged from tears. She clutched the phone receiver like it was a lifeline, her voice frantic. Ronan already knew who she was calling. Caleb. And the best part? Caleb wasn't answering. Ronan smirked as he lifted a small recording device, listening in through the phone tap he had set up hours earlier. Vivian's voice cracked. "Caleb, please, pick up." Silence. Then the voicemail tone. She tried again. Again. By the fourth attempt, her voice was shaking. "Caleb, you can't do this to me," she whispered. "Please. I can fix this. I can." Another voicemail. Vivian slammed the receiver down, her hands shaking. Ronan tilted his head, watching the panic spread across her face. This was it. This was the moment she realized she was truly alone. She had sold her soul to a man who never intended to save her. And now she was just another liability. Ronan's phone buzzed. A text from Noah Briggs. "It's time." Ronan smiled. Yes it was. Caleb Monroe had always believed he was smarter than everyone else. That's why he thought he could betray Ronan, betray Vivian, betray even his own men, and get away with it. But Ronan had been playing this game long before Caleb even knew he was a pawn. Now Caleb was on the run. Ronan pulled up in front of a sleek, modern penthouse, the kind only men with dirty money and expensive tastes could afford. Inside, Caleb was packing. Through the security feed, **** hacked by Noah Briggs hours earlier. ***, Ronan watched him throwing money, IDs, and weapons into a duffel bag. The man was running scared. Good. Ronan tapped his fingers against the steering wheel, waiting. The moment Caleb stepped outside, the game was over. The seconds ticked by. Then, movement. Caleb appeared at the front door, a black hoodie pulled over his head, sunglasses masking his face. But Ronan had spent years hunting targets in far worse disguises. He watched Caleb step onto the sidewalk. Waited, then moved. The SUV's tires screeched as Ronan accelerated. Caleb barely had time to react before Ronan slammed the brakes, stopping inches from him. The moment Caleb turned, Ronan was already out of the car. The gun in his hand pressed against Caleb's ribs before the man even had a chance to run. "Going somewhere?" Ronan asked casually. Caleb's breath hitched. He recognized the voice immediately. And for the first time he knew. There was no escape. Caleb Monroe wasn't used to feeling powerless. For years he had controlled everything: business deals, corrupt politicians, even life and death. But now he had a gun pressed against his ribs and a man standing in front of him who had already survived one murder attempt. And Ronan Calloway didn't look like he was here for a conversation. Caleb swallowed hard, his mind racing for a way out. "Let's take a drive," Ronan said, his voice calm. Too calm. Caleb tensed. "Where?" Ronan's smirk didn't reach his eyes. "You'll see." He gestured toward the SUV. Caleb's jaw clenched, his hands twitching at his sides like he was considering making a run for it. Ronan sighed. "You can try running, Caleb. But let me give you some free advice. I'm faster. And my patience is running out." A muscle in Caleb's cheek ticked, but he knew he had no choice. Slowly he climbed into the passenger seat. Ronan slid into the driver's seat, the gun still trained on him. He pulled away from the curb, driving through the darkened streets. "Where are we going?" Caleb asked after a long silence. Ronan didn't answer. Because Caleb wasn't asking the right question. The right question wasn't where they were going. It was if he would make it back alive. They drove for nearly 30 minutes, the city lights fading into darkness as Ronan took back roads, avoiding cameras, avoiding traffic. Caleb shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "What do you want, Calloway?" Ronan kept his eyes on the road. "I already told you. Justice." Caleb let out a sharp laugh. "Come on. We both know you don't believe in that." Ronan smirked. "You're right. I don't." Caleb's breath caught. That was the first real moment of fear. Ronan didn't believe in justice. He believed in revenge. The SUV slowed as they approached an old construction site on the outskirts of the city. It was deserted, forgotten, the perfect place for a man to disappear. Ronan killed the engine. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Ronan pulled out his phone and tapped the screen once. Caleb's own voice filled the car. "Grayson was first, but we both knew that. He was getting too close. The only way to move forward was to get rid of the past." Caleb went rigid. Ronan turned to face him fully, watching as realization dawned in his eyes. "You recorded us." Ronan shrugged. Seemed like a smart idea. Caleb's breathing turned shallow. He was losing the fight now and he knew it. "You've already won," he whispered. "The feds will arrest me. You don't need to do this." Ronan tilted his head. "Don't I?" Silence. Then Caleb played his last card. "I can help you," he said. "You think I was the top of the chain? You're wrong. There's someone else. Someone bigger." Ronan let him sit in that desperation for a moment before answering. "I know." Caleb's mouth opened slightly. His eyes flicked toward the door handle. Ronan already saw it coming. Before Caleb could move, Ronan slammed the gun against his jaw. "Ah." Caleb grunted, clutching his face. Ronan leaned in, his voice a whisper. "You don't get to run, Caleb." Caleb panted, his hands shaking. "You're not going to kill me." Ronan smirked. "You're right." Caleb blinked, confused. And that's when Ronan opened his phone and dialed a number. Noah Briggs answered on the first ring. "You ready?" Ronan asked. Noah's voice came through the speaker. "We're in position." Caleb froze. Ronan smirked. "Say hi to the FBI, Caleb." The moment Caleb heard the sirens, his face drained of color. And oh, he lunged for the door handle. Too late. The SUV was already surrounded. FBI agents, armed and ready, moved in fast, their weapons drawn. Noah Briggs stepped forward, his badge gleaming in the headlights. "Caleb Monroe, you're under arrest." Caleb's panic erupted. "This is a mistake," he yelled. "He set me up. That recording." Noah cut him off. "We have more than a recording, Monroe. We have bank statements. Witnesses. You're done." Caleb turned to Ronan, rage twisting his features. "You son of a..." Ronan opened the door and stepped out. Caleb tried to follow, but Noah grabbed him, slamming him against the car. "Careful," Noah murmured. "Wouldn't want you to get hurt before trial." Caleb thrashed. Calloway, you bastard. You think this is over? Ronan stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough so only Caleb could hear. It is for you. Caleb stilled. Ronan's smirk deepened. I told you I wouldn't kill you. He leaned in just a little closer. But prison? That's worse than death for a man like you. Caleb shook with fury, but he couldn't fight it. Not anymore. The FBI dragged him away, shoving him into the back of a black van. And just like that, Caleb Monroe was finished. Ronan watched as the vehicle disappeared into the night. But he wasn't satisfied yet. Because there was still one loose end. Vivian. And she was next. Vivian Calloway was many things. A liar, a traitor, a survivor. But tonight she was just desperate. She had nothing left. Her power, her money, her influence? Gone. Caleb was rotting in a jail cell, and now the authorities were looking at her. She knew Ronan had set Caleb up. She wasn't stupid, so she did the only thing she could. She called the one man she swore she would never beg. Ronan Calloway. The phone rang twice. Then, his voice. Come. Dangerous. Vivian. Her breath hitched. I need to see you. Silence. She squeezed the phone, forcing herself to keep her voice steady. I know you don't trust me, but... I don't. His voice sent a shiver through her. I have information, she blurted out. On Caleb. On the people behind him. If you want to finish what you started, you'll meet me. More silence. Then, fine. Vivian exhaled. She had just one more chance to escape this mess. And if Ronan wouldn't save her, she'd have to kill him first. The location was set, an abandoned warehouse by the docks. Classic. Predictable. Ronan arrived first. He always did. He stood in the shadows, watching, waiting. Vivian thought she was the one setting the trap. But Ronan had been the trap all along. The second Vivian stepped inside, he saw it, the hesitation in her movements. The way her hand hovered just a little too close to her purse. She was carrying. Of course she was. Ronan smirked, stepping forward. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Vivian flinched. What? Ronan pointed lazily at her purse. You're not here to make a deal. You're here to survive. She swallowed. He was right. Ronan tilted his head. How do you think this ends, Viv? Vivian's lips trembled. That depends on you. Ronan sighed, stepping closer. Wrong. Vivian tensed. And then he pulled out his phone. One tap. Vivian's own voice filled the space between them. Grayson was first, but we both knew that. He was getting too close. The only way to move forward was to get rid of the past. Her breath caught. You recorded me? Ronan smiled. Cool. Sure. Of course I did. Vivian staggered back. She had lost. Completely. Vivian Calloway had always thought she could lie her way out of anything. But now she had nowhere left to run. Her eyes flicked toward the exit. What do you want? Ronan watched her closely. I want you to understand something, Viv. She swallowed hard. All those years you thought you were playing the game, he said. But the truth? He stepped closer. You were just another pawn. Vivian trembled. She knew he wasn't lying. What are you going to do? She whispered. Ronan reached into his pocket. Vivian flinched. But instead of a gun, he pulled out a flash drive. She blinked. What's that? Your confession, Ronan said, tossing it onto the table between them. Copies have already been sent to the feds. Vivian's breath hitched. You're bluffing. Ronan's smirk deepened. You willing to bet your life on that? She went still. This was it. The moment she realized there was no way out. She had one option left. And Ronan knew exactly what she would do next. Vivian lunged for the gun in her purse. Ronan was faster. The second her fingers wrapped around the handle, he was already moving. One sharp twist. A struggle. A single, deafening gunshot. Vivian staggered backward, her hand clutching her stomach. Her eyes widened in shock. You, she gasped, her knees buckling. Ronan caught her before she hit the ground. He leaned in close, whispering in her ear. Betrayal has a price, Vivian. She tried to speak, but the words never came. And just like that, her game was over. Vivian Calloway was dead. Her blood still pooled on the concrete floor, her eyes glassy with the weight of 1,000 regrets. Ronan didn't waste time looking at her. She had made her choices. But this wasn't the end. Because Caleb Monroe? He wasn't the real power behind Grayson's death. He was just another puppet. Ronan had known it the moment Caleb tried to make a deal with the feds. The desperation in his voice, the way he had hinted at a bigger player. Someone who could make men like Grayson Calloway disappear. Someone who wanted Ronan dead too. And now it was time to find out who that someone was. He reached into Vivian's purse, pulling out her phone. There it was, a single unsent message. To a number he didn't recognize. "We have a problem. Call me." Ronan smirked. "Not anymore, Viv." He dialed the number. It rang once. Twice. Then, a voice he didn't recognize. Confident. "Is it done?" Ronan's smile faded. He had just found his next target. The voice on the other end of the line was calm. Too calm. This wasn't some small-time criminal. This was someone used to being in control. Ronan played along. "Yeah," he said. "It's done." A short pause. Then, "Good. Where are you?" Ronan's grip on the phone tightened. He knew this game. Whoever this was, they weren't asking to check in. They were checking if he was where they expected him to be. Which meant, they already had someone watching. Ronan's eyes flicked to the windows, scanning the darkened rooftops around the warehouse. Were they here already? He turned back toward Vivian's body. She had been disposable to them. Just another piece in a larger scheme. And now, they thought he was too. He let out a slow breath. "Meet me at the docks in an hour," he said. Another pause. Then, understood. The call ended. Ronan slipped the phone into his pocket and grabbed his gun. Whoever this was, they just made a mistake. They thought they were coming to kill him. They didn't realize they were walking into their own grave. The docks were quiet. Too quiet. Ronan had been here before, different country, different war, but the same feeling. This was a kill zone. He kept his movements casual as he stepped onto the worn wooden planks, the cold ocean air biting at his skin. His every sense was sharp, alert. Waiting. Then footsteps. A man emerged from the shadows. Tall. Dressed in an expensive black coat. His face was calm, composed. Dangerous. And Ronan recognized him instantly. Damian Vaughn. Geo. Defense contractor. A man with enough political pull to make problems disappear. Including Grayson Calloway. Vaughn smiled, stopping a few feet away. "Ronan Calloway." Ronan tilted his head. "You know my name." "That's interesting." Vaughn smirked. "Of course I do." Ronan's grip on his gun tightened. "You're the one who gave the order, aren't you?" Vaughn sighed. Grayson was getting too close to things he didn't understand. "We made sure he wouldn't be a problem." Ronan felt the rage coil inside him. "You made a mistake," he said, his voice quiet. Vaughn raised a brow. "Oh." Ronan smiled coldly. "You should have killed me first." Before Vaughn could react, Ronan moved. One shot. Straight to the leg. Vaughn crashed to the ground, gasping in pain. Ronan stood over him, his gun steady. "You think you control everything?" Vaughn gritted his teeth, clutching his bleeding leg. "You kill me and my people will come for you." Ronan smirked. "That's the fun part." And then he fired again. The body of Damian Vaughn hit the docks with a lifeless thud. The man who had ordered Grayson Calloway's murder, who had orchestrated everything from behind his ivory tower, was finally dead. Ronan exhaled slowly, the cold night air pressing against his skin. It should have felt like victory. But it didn't. Because this wasn't over. Not yet. He pulled out Vaughn's phone and scrolled through his messages. He needed to know who else was involved, who else knew what had just happened. One text stood out. From an unknown number. "Ide, 10 minutes. Are we clear for extraction?" Ronan's grip on the phone tightened. They were coming. And they were almost here. He tucked the phone into his pocket, grabbed his gun, and disappeared into the shadows. Let them come. He was ready. Ronan crouched behind a stack of shipping containers, his pulse steady. He had been on the other side of this before. Hunting. Tracking. Tonight he was the one being hunted. The first SUV rolled up to the docks. Blacked-out windows. Bulletproof frame. High-level mercenaries. Not regular muscle killers trained to erase problems. They stepped out, 3 men, armed and moving with precision. Ronan smirked. Not good enough. He waited, letting them fan out. One moved too far from the others. A mistake. Ronan moved like a ghost, silent and fast. He was behind the man before he even knew what was happening. A sharp strike to the throat. The mercenary staggered, gasping for breath. Before he could recover, Ronan wrapped an arm around his neck and twisted. A soft crack. The body slumped to the ground. One down. Two to go. The other two mercenaries heard the noise. One turned sharply. Too slow. Ronan's gun fired once. A clean headshot. The third man panicked, raising his weapon, but Ronan was already there. A brutal kick to the knee. The mercenary crashed onto the ground, groaning. Ronan yanked the gun from his grasp and pressed it against his forehead. "Who sent you?" he asked. The man trembled. "Vaughn," he gasped. He had others. A backup plan. Ronan's jaw clenched. "What plan?" The mercenary swallowed hard. "To take you out. If Vaughn failed, you were next." Ronan nodded. "Good to know." And then he pulled the trigger. The man's body slumped. Silence. Ronan reloaded his gun and exhaled slowly. This was it. The final war had begun. And he was ready for every last piece of it. Ronan moved through the shadows, his mind sharp, his body steady. The docks were littered with bodies, but this wasn't over. Not yet. Vaughn had been powerful, but he wasn't the last man in the chain. The backup plan was already in motion. And that meant Ronan had limited time. He pulled Vaughn's phone from his pocket, checking the last messages. One name stood out. Marcus Steele. A name he knew all too well. A former CIA Black Ops commander turned international fixer. A man who didn't ask questions, only took orders and eliminated problems. And now, Ronan was the next problem on his list. He clenched his jaw and started walking. There was no use waiting for them to come to him. He was going to find Marcus first. This wasn't a game anymore. This was war. And Ronan Calloway had spent his whole life winning wars. By the time Ronan reached the city, he had already put together a plan. Marcus Steele wouldn't be hiding. A man like him? He wanted Ronan to come. So Ronan did exactly that. He found Marcus in an upscale, private club in the heart of the city. The kind of place where criminals and politicians drank at the same bar. Ronan walked through the front doors like he belonged. Inside, Marcus Steele was already waiting. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, with a calm stare that said he had killed more men than he could count. "You're a hard man to track down," Marcus said, swirling a glass of bourbon. "But here you are." Ronan didn't sit. "You're the cleanup guy," he said flatly. "Cleaning up Vaughn's mess." Marcus smirked. "Something like that." Ronan's eyes flicked to the two men standing behind him. "Armed. Ready." "Let's cut the bullshit," Ronan said. "You're here to kill me." Marcus sighed, setting down his drink. "It's nothing personal." Ronan smiled. "It is for me." And then he struck. The first man reached for his gun, but Ronan was already moving. A sharp twist. A broken wrist. A gun yanked from weak fingers. Ronan fired once. The second man dropped instantly. Marcus barely flinched. "You're quick." Ronan tilted his head. "You're slow." Marcus chuckled. "You know killing me won't stop this, right?" Ronan smirked. "I know." Marcus took a slow sip of his drink, then set it down with precision. "Then why are you here?" Ronan raised his gun and aimed. "To send a message." He fired. A single clean shot. Marcus grunted, clutching his bleeding shoulder. "Not fatal. Just a warning." Ronan leaned in, his voice low. "Tell your people that if they come for me, they better not miss." Marcus's breath was shallow, but his smirk never faded. "This isn't over," he whispered. Ronan stepped back, tucking his gun away. "No," he agreed. "It's just getting started." He walked out without looking back. He had one last enemy left. And it was time to end this. Ronan had spent his entire life in war zones. But this was personal. He drove through the city, his mind already 10 steps ahead. Marcus Steele was a wounded animal now. A man like that wouldn't back down, he doubled down. Ronan checked Vaughn's phone one last time. Steele had contacts. And one of those contacts led to a name Ronan had been waiting for. The real man behind everything. Elliot Grayson. A senator. A man with deep political ties, old money, and power that stretched beyond borders. He had funded Vaughn. He had funded everything. And now, Ronan was going to rip his entire world apart. He made one stop before heading to Elliot Grayson's estate. A weapons cache. Noah Briggs had set it up earlier, just in case. Inside the warehouse, Ronan loaded 2 handguns, a sniper rifle, and enough ammunition to start a war. Because that's exactly what this was. He strapped a blade to his boot and grabbed a burner phone. Then he drove straight to the lion's den. Tonight, Elliot Grayson was going to learn the price of his sins. Elliot Grayson's estate sat on 30 acres of private land. Guarded, fenced, patrolled. Ronan didn't bother sneaking in. Instead, he walked right up to the front gate. A guard stepped forward. "Sir, this is private." Ronan shot him in the knee before he could finish the sentence. The second guard reached for his radio. Ronan's second bullet ended the conversation. The alarms sounded. Good. Ronan stalked forward, stepping over bodies, his gun raised. From the main house, more guards spilled out. Trained killers. Men paid to die for powerful people. Ronan didn't slow down. A shot. A body fell. Another. Then another. The front door burst open. And there he was. Elliot Grayson. Gray. But his eyes were sharp. He wasn't afraid. Not yet. Ronan lowered his gun and smiled. "It's time we talked." Elliot Grayson poured himself a drink. The mansion was eerily silent now. His security detail was dead. His power meant nothing here. But still he wasn't panicking. "You made quite the mess," Grayson murmured, swirling his whiskey. Ronan leaned against the desk, watching him. "You ordered my brother's death." Grayson sighed. "No, I didn't. I ordered a problem to be handled. Your brother got in the way." Ronan clenched his jaw. "That's the same thing." Grayson took a slow sip. "It's not." Ronan grabbed the glass and smashed it against the desk. Grayson barely flinched. "You think you're untouchable," Ronan muttered. Grayson smiled. A politician's smile. "I am." Ronan pulled out his burner phone and hit play. The hidden recording of Vaughn's confession filled the room. Elliot Grayson signed off on everything. He wanted Grayson Calloway dead. He wanted Ronan out of the picture too. For the first time, Grayson's mask cracked. Ronan smirked. "Now you're not." The sound of sirens filled the night. The FBI was here. Grayson's eyes widened. "What did you do?" Ronan holstered his gun and leaned in. "I finished the war." The doors burst open. FBI agents swarmed in. Grayson reached for something. Maybe a gun, maybe a phone. Ronan didn't care. Because as they dragged the senator away, he knew one thing for certain. Grayson Calloway had been avenged. The sirens faded into the distance as the FBI vehicles disappeared down the long, winding road leading away from Elliot Grayson's estate. Ronan stood in the wreckage of the war he had just won. Blood stained the marble floors. Bodies littered the grand entrance. And yet he felt nothing. No satisfaction. No relief. Just silence. He had spent weeks hunting every last person responsible for Grayson's death. And now, it was over. Or at least it should have been. He turned and walked through the ruins, stepping over men who had died protecting a monster. He stopped at the bar, pouring himself a drink. The ice clinked against the glass. He took a sip, staring at the wreckage. It had all led to this. His brother was dead. Vivian was dead. Caleb was locked away, rotting in a concrete box. And Elliot Grayson? His career was over. The world would chew him up and spit him out, just like he had done to everyone else. Ronan had won. So why did it feel like he had lost something too? A voice broke through the silence. "You're still here." Ronan turned. Noah Briggs stood in the doorway, watching him carefully. "You should be gone by now," Noah said. Ronan smirked. "What? You worried about me?" Noah sighed, stepping forward. "You're the last loose end, Calloway. You think the feds will let you walk?" Ronan swirled his drink. "They don't have a choice." Noah studied him. "And after this? What's next?" Ronan didn't answer. Because for the first time in his life, he didn't know. Ronan had spent his entire life belonging somewhere. In war zones. In missions. In the shadows. But now he was a ghost. No family. No home. No cause left to fight for. The morning air was crisp as he stood at Grayson's grave. The cemetery was empty, just him, his brother, and the silence between them. He pulled a cigarette from his pocket, lighting it with steady fingers. "You'd hate this," Ronan muttered, glancing at the name carved into the stone. Grayson Calloway. FBI agent. A good man. Ronan exhaled slowly. "I did what you couldn't." He looked at the fresh dirt, the flowers someone had left earlier. "But I don't think I'm coming back from this one, brother." The wind whispered through the trees. Ronan took another drag. Then his phone buzzed. He checked the screen. An unknown number. His stomach coiled. He answered. Yeah. Pause. Then a familiar voice. Marcus Steele. Calloway, Marcus said, his tone unreadable. Ronan clenched his jaw. I thought I made myself clear. You did. A short pause. But we both know this isn't over. Ronan exhaled. Of course it wasn't. You started a war, Calloway, Marcus continued. And wars don't just end. Ronan closed his eyes for a moment. He had known this call was coming. Because when you kill powerful men, someone always comes looking. Meet me, Marcus said. Ronan tapped the cigarette against the headstone. And if I don't? Marcus chuckled. Then someone else will come knocking. And they won't be as polite. The line went dead. Ronan sighed. Then he laughed. Because of course this wasn't over. Ronan sat in the back of a dimly lit bar, nursing a whiskey. Marcus Steele was late. Not surprising. The man liked control. Power. He wanted Ronan to know who was in charge. Too bad for him. Ronan had never taken orders from anyone. Finally Marcus walked in. The ex-CIA fixer took the seat across from him, his face unreadable. You've made some powerful enemies, Marcus said. Ronan smirked. They made me first. Marcus studied him. You should leave the country. Ronan raised a brow. That a suggestion or a threat? Both, Marcus admitted. You killed men who mattered. That doesn't go unnoticed. Ronan sipped his drink. Neither do I. Marcus exhaled. This won't stop, Calloway. You took out Vaughn, but his people aren't done. They don't care about justice. They want revenge. Ronan leaned forward. Let them come. Marcus smirked. You sound like a man looking for a fight. Ronan tilted his head. Maybe I am. Marcus went quiet. Then, he pulled out a small envelope and slid it across the table. A plane ticket, Marcus said. A way out. Ronan tapped his fingers against the glass. And if I don't take it? Marcus shrugged. Then you'll keep fighting until someone puts you in the ground. Ronan stared at the envelope. He had spent his entire life fighting. Maybe it was time to disappear. Or maybe he still had unfinished business. His fingers curled around the ticket. Marcus watched him. So, he asked. Ronan exhaled slowly. It was time to make a choice. The envelope sat untouched on the bar table. A one-way ticket out of the country. A chance to leave everything behind, to escape the war before it swallowed him whole. Marcus Steele sipped his drink, his gaze sharp. You've done what you came to do, Calloway. You got your revenge. Now get out before someone finishes the job for you. Ronan ran his fingers over the envelope's crisp edges, feeling the weight of it. A way out. A clean slate. But he wasn't sure he deserved one. He thought about Grayson. His brother had fought for justice and in return he had been betrayed and murdered. Would Grayson want him to walk away? Or would he want him to finish what he started? Ronan exhaled, leaning back in his chair. What happens if I stay? Marcus's smirk faded. You'll be hunted. No more deals. No more second chances. Ronan chuckled. Nothing new then. Marcus sighed. Look, you think you've won, but there's still one last piece of the puzzle. Elliot Grayson might be locked up, but his network isn't. His people, his silent partners, they're already looking for you. Ronan's smirk disappeared. Marcus leaned in. You leave, you survive. You stay, you fight. But know this, if you stay, you're going to war with men who own this country. Ronan tapped the ticket against the table. Then he slid it back to Marcus. I'm staying. Marcus exhaled sharply. Damn it, Calloway. Ronan finished his whiskey, setting the glass down with finality. Tell them to send whoever they want. He stood, slipping his gun into his jacket. I'm not done yet. Ronan didn't wait for them to come for him. He went after them first. Elliot Grayson had a network of powerful allies, men who had built their fortunes on secrets, control, and blood. And Ronan? He was about to take a wrecking ball to it. The first target was a man named Jonathan Pierce, a political strategist, a man who had spent his career making problems disappear. Ronan found him in his penthouse overlooking the city. Pierce had bodyguards, security cameras, and a false sense of safety. None of it mattered. Ronan took out the first two guards without making a sound. The third one he left alive, just long enough for Pierce to wake up and see what was happening. The man stirred in his expensive silk sheets, blinking as Ronan pressed a gun to his forehead. What the hell? Shut up. Ronan's voice was calm. Cold. Pierce swallowed hard, realizing what was happening. Listen, we can work something out. Ronan tilted his head. Like how you worked out my brother's death? Pierce froze. Ronan leaned in. You don't get to negotiate, Pierce. You get one option. Tell me everything you know. Pierce hesitated. Ronan didn't. A sharp punch to the ribs. Pierce gasped, his breath hitching. Talk, Ronan murmured. Pierce gritted his teeth. All right. All right. Ronan smiled. Good boy. Pierce spilled everything. The hidden bank accounts. The payoffs, the secret meetings, the men who still held power even after Elliot Grayson's fall. But one name stood out. Richard Carlyle. A name Ronan knew. A billionaire. A shadowy figure who had been untouchable for years. If Elliot Grayson had been the one orchestrating Grayson's murder, then Richard Carlyle had been paying for it. He was the man at the very top. And he was still free. Ronan leaned back, his gun still pointed at Pierce. You gave me what I wanted, he admitted. Pierce nodded quickly, hope flickering in his eyes. So we're good, right? Ronan smiled. And then he pulled the trigger. The bullet tore through Pierce's skull. He slumped forward, dead before he hit the bed. Ronan exhaled, stepping back. Now it was just him and Carlyle. The last man standing. The one who thought he was safe. Ronan checked his watch. Not for much longer. Richard Carlyle had spent decades building an empire of untouchability. He sat above the law, above justice, above consequences. Men like him didn't fear prison or bullets, because they believed they were gods. But Ronan Calloway had never believed in gods. And tonight he was coming to burn the kingdom down. Carlyle was hiding. Not in a penthouse. Not in some high-security bunker. No. He had vanished off the grid. Because he knew Ronan was coming. But Ronan knew men like Carlyle. They didn't disappear completely. They hid where they still had power. And Ronan knew exactly where to look. Carlyle had one last safe house. A heavily guarded estate in the mountains, hidden behind layers of security, mercenaries, and steel gates. A place built for the powerful to retreat when the world turned against them. Too bad for Carlyle, Ronan wasn't the world. He was worse. The night was pitch black when Ronan arrived. Carlyle's estate loomed ahead, its high walls lined with security cameras, armed men patrolling the perimeter. A fortress. Impenetrable. At least that's what Carlyle thought. Ronan watched from a distance, eyes tracking the movement of the guards. He counted. 10 outside. Probably 20 more inside. They weren't security. They were killers. The kind who didn't ask questions, only pulled triggers. But Ronan had one advantage. They were waiting for an army. They weren't expecting one man. And that was their first mistake. Ronan moved like a shadow, slipping through the trees until he reached the back fence. The guard closest to him never heard a sound. A quick, clean slice to the throat. The second guard turned, too slow. A knife straight to the ribs. Silent. Fast. By the time Ronan reached the house, 4 men were already dead. And no one even knew he was here yet. He smirked. Let's change that. He pulled a small explosive charge from his pack, planting it against the main security panel. Beep. Beep. Boom. The entire estate went dark. The alarms blared. Shouts echoed. Panic. The guards started scrambling, grabbing weapons, running toward the security breach. And in that chaos, Ronan slipped inside. Straight toward Richard Carlyle. Ronan moved through the halls like a ghost, gun steady in his grip. Guards were still rushing toward the explosion site. But Ronan wasn't heading for the blast. He was heading for the master bedroom. The place where Carlyle would be hiding. Because men like him? They never ran to the fight. They waited for others to die first. Ronan reached the top of the stairs, his boots silent on the marble. A guard appeared, gun raised. Ronan fired first. One shot. A clean headshot. The man dropped. Ronan kept moving. Down the hallway. Through the massive double doors. And there, standing at the far end of the room, shaking, holding a gun he didn't know how to use, Richard Carlyle. Ronan shut the doors behind him. Carlyle stumbled back, his face pale. You. Ronan raised his gun. Carlyle's fingers shook against the trigger. He had probably never held a gun before. He had paid for other men to kill for him. But now, there was no one left to save him. Carlyle swallowed hard. I can pay you. Ronan smirked. You already have. Carlyle froze. Ronan stepped closer, voice quiet. Lethal. You paid for my brother's execution. Paid to have me erased. Carlyle's breath hitched. Ronan raised his gun. Carlyle dropped his. I can give you more, he stammered. I can make you disappear. No more fights. No more war. Ronan cocked his head. I don't want to disappear. Carlyle licked his lips. Then what do you want? Ronan pulled the trigger. A single final shot. Carlyle's body crumpled. Ronan exhaled. The last man. The real mastermind. Gone. He turned, walking out of the room as the sound of sirens began to wail in the distance. Because now it was truly over. The body of Richard Carlyle was still warm when Ronan stepped out of the mansion. The night air was thick with the smell of gunpowder and death. The war was over. No more enemies left. No more loose ends. And yet, Ronan didn't feel relief. He had spent weeks hunting, planning, killing. His life had been one mission after another. And now, there was nothing left to fight. The distant sound of sirens snapped him back to the present. He had minutes, maybe less, before the feds arrived. Ronan pulled a burner phone from his pocket, dialing the only number that mattered now. Noah Briggs answered on the first ring. It's done, Ronan said, his voice even. Silence. Then Noah exhaled. Jesus Christ, he muttered. Carlyle? Dead. Noah didn't sound surprised. You need to get out of there, Calloway. I know. I'm serious. You've made too many enemies. The feds won't look the other way on this one. Ronan glanced toward the city lights in the distance. You got my exit set up? Noah hesitated. Then, yeah. A safe house. A new identity. A way out. It was already in motion. But Ronan still wasn't sure if he wanted to take it. He hung up the phone. Then, without looking back, he walked into the darkness. The cemetery was empty. No sounds. No movement. Just Ronan and his brother's grave. The final stop before he disappeared. He knelt down, running a hand over the cold stone. Grayson Calloway. Beloved son. Loyal brother. A man who believed in justice. Ronan sighed. You'd hate what I did, he muttered. But I don't regret it. He pulled a pack of cigarettes from his jacket, lighting one. Took a slow drag. The wind whispered through the trees. He thought about leaving. About taking the new identity Noah had set up. Starting over. But something inside him hesitated. Was this really what he wanted? To run? To pretend none of this happened? He exhaled, watching the smoke drift upward. No. He wasn't built for a quiet life. He had spent too many years in the dark. And now he realized something else. There would always be another Carlyle. Another man in a suit, pulling strings, thinking he was untouchable. And maybe, just maybe, that's why he wasn't supposed to leave. Maybe this was who he was meant to be. A man who hunted the untouchable. A man who made sure monsters never slept easy. He finished the cigarette, crushing it against the headstone. Then he stood, looking down at his brother's name one last time. I'll see you on the other side, he murmured. And then he walked away. Not to disappear, but to start something new. The city stretched out before him, a skyline of shadows and neon. Ronan stood on the rooftop of an abandoned warehouse, the cold night air biting at his skin. He could still hear the faint echoes of sirens in the distance, but they weren't for him. Not anymore. His war was supposed to be over. But he knew better. Justice didn't exist in the real world. Not the kind that men like Grayson had believed in. Only balance. And balance came with blood and consequence. Ronan had spent his entire life hunting men in the dark. He had taken down criminals, warlords, and terrorists. And yet, the worst monsters always wore suits. Men like Carlyle and Grayson. They weren't just individuals. They were a system. Cut off one head and another took its place. He exhaled slowly, gripping the railing. He thought about Noah's exit plan. The fake passport. The safe house. It was all waiting for him. But he wasn't sure he could take it. Because for the first time in his life he had no orders. No mission. He had a choice. And then his phone rang. A new burner. Only one person had the number. He answered. Talk. Noah's voice came through, sharp and fast. You might want to rethink leaving. Ronan frowned. Why? Noah hesitated. Because Carlyle wasn't the last one. Silence stretched between them. Ronan's jaw tightened. Who? Noah exhaled. There's a list. A long one. Men in power. The kind that keep people like Carlyle in business. The kind that gave him orders. Ronan's grip on the phone tightened. And let me guess, he murmured. They think they're untouchable? Noah let out a dry chuckle. Yeah. And that's exactly why we need someone like you. Ronan said nothing. Because deep down he already knew the answer. He wasn't leaving. He wasn't running. His war wasn't over. It was just beginning. He slid his gun into his holster and stepped off the rooftop, disappearing into the night. One last mission. One last fight. And this time, no one was safe. The rain started just as Ronan stepped onto the empty street. Cold. Relentless. Cleansing. It soaked through his jacket, beating off the gun still holstered at his side. But he didn't feel it. Not really. His mind was already miles ahead, thinking of what came next. For the first time in his life he wasn't taking orders. There was no mission brief. No team. No backup. No country watching his back. Just him. And a long road filled with men who needed to be erased. Noah's words still echoed in his head. There's a list. A long one. Men who think they're untouchable. And wasn't that the real truth? It was never about one man. Elliot Grayson, Caleb Monroe, Richard Carlyle, they were just the ones who got caught. But the machine that made them? The system that let them order deaths with a handshake and a signature? That was still out there. And Ronan? He wasn't done yet. He lit a cigarette, shielding the flame from the wind. He took a slow drag, letting the smoke burn through his lungs. The world would never know his name. But they would know his work. And soon, the men on that list would know what fear truly was. He exhaled and flicked the cigarette away, watching the embers fade against the wet pavement. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed. Noah answered instantly. Change of plans, Ronan said. Noah sighed. I figured. Ronan smirked. Tell me about the first name on that list. A short pause. Then, Noah gave him a name. Ronan smiled. Got it? And just like that he disappeared into the night. A ghost with no past. A reckoning with no mercy. The last real hunter in a world filled with prey. And this time, the monsters weren't just going to run. They were going to die. The end. Or is it? Because justice? That was never real. And some ghosts? They never rest. Alright, you made it this far. Now it's your move. If you loved this journey, if you felt the revenge, the war, the darkness, then do one thing for me. Hit that like button. Share this story with someone who needs a damn good revenge tale. And most importantly, subscribe. Because this was just the beginning. Now tell me, if you were in Ronan's shoes, would you walk away? Or would you finish the war? Drop your answer in the comments. I'll be watching.